Next on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
On this week's special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we sit down with experts from John Deere to learn more about solutions to help save time, money, and effort in your operation. NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen starts now.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen with host Kevin Oxner.
Hello and welcome to this week's special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Oxner. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're talking with the experts from John Deere about solutions that will work for you in your operation. And joining me in the studio today are Ron Schwertner. Ron, you're a marketing planner, I understand, with John Deere. Is that right?
That's correct. Thank you.
Excellent. Jim Books, a hay and forage product specialist.
Yes.
Excellent. And we have with us Rex Edmonds, Georgian, and Division Marketing Manager, I understand, for the 5 Series tractor.
That's right.
And, of course, Jason Kinsey, who's a product specialist for the Frontier line of equipment.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. I appreciate it. Ron, I wanted to begin with you. Let's talk about John Deere's not only tractors, but also your hay and forage equipment, and specifically how some of your equipment can not only help cattlemen become more productive, but also save some time and money in their operations.
Sure, Kevin. That's a good question. You know, the cattleman today is all about feeding his cattle so that he can create a great product and he can take to market, right? And John Deere is all about providing solutions, machinery solutions that helps the man create the product that he needs to feed his cattle.
Sure.
And there's a wide range of products available out in the marketplace. John Deere offers products from cutting and mowing to baling to tractors that pull these implements through the field, as well as just a host of other attachments that could go along with the tractor and the implements that we offer.
Jim, as a hay and forage specialist, what would you add?
Well, you need to match up the size of the operation to the size and the type of equipment.
Okay.
We have, like Ron said, a wide variety. Some of it's very simple based, like we've used for years and years. But we're moving more today to a more technology-based stuff. Mm-hmm. We can document things, the yield per acre and the value of that feed. And that can be important because then we can make logical decisions on our total farming operation, which seed to select, which time to harvest to get the most. Because we're learning that it costs about the same amount of money to do a poor job as it does to do a good job. And we got to keep working towards that good job. And we're being looked at from all segments on how we take care of our land and our livestock.
You bet.
And the image we give as a farmer is very important. So matching up those machines and doing it in a matched way. So sometimes we have to build it around the tractor the guy already owns.
Sure.
And we know and we understand how many acres and how many cows he's trying to take care of.
You bet.
Other times he may be just adding a piece of implement, and that piece of implement brings a new technology. And that's going to sometimes lessen the cost even though we're spending money to do it. And that's what you got to be ready to do.
Yeah, sometimes that's a hard concept. But you talk a little bit about some of the forage equipment and implements. I know tractor selection, Ron, is a really important issue. And sometimes it's a little confusing to try to figure out how do you put together the right system and what tractors do you need for the implements that you're pulling with that tractor. What tips would you give our viewers about that?
Well, you're exactly right. There's a wide range of tractors that start at 20 horsepower and go all the way up to 550 horsepower in our lineup.
Right.
So how do you go about deciding what's the right size for me?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, I would say the producers need to go talk to their John Deere sales professional. He's located at their local John Deere dealership, and he really knows the area. He really knows the trends in your particular region. He's going to ask the questions about how big is your operation? How fast do you need to get your haying done?
Sure.
What are your requirements? And then he's going to point you towards a tractor size. He's going to say, well, you probably need 150 horsepower tractor to do those jobs. Mm-hmm. And the next person he talks to may only need 100 horsepower, but the sales professional can lead you in the right direction. Well, once you find the right size, that's just when the decision making really starts, because we try to offer products from in many different models in the same horsepower.
Right. Yeah, and that's very different from some of the older tractors I'm used to, the 4430 and 4440 and so forth. There's not nearly as many options as what you have today. And I'd ask you the same questions, Ron. What advice would you give people as they begin their tractor selection process?
Well, that's exactly right. There are more tractors in that let's say 40 to 140 horsepower window, which I think that a lot of cattlemen really have to go after for their operations. There are more tractors today than there ever been, and we understand that, and we think that that provides more opportunities for solutions than we've had before, but it also provides opportunity for confusion as well.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you about. As one of the division marketing managers for the 5 Series, I got to ask you about this new numbering system that you've come out with. Can you explain that a little bit to this old cowboy?
Absolutely, and I understand that you may have concerns about it. Some of the people who've expressed those say, what are those guys doing changing the numbers again?
Just confusing.
Yeah, but actually I think if you understand what the number means now, you'll say, well, they probably did a good thing. The first digit in the numbering, in the nomenclature now, stands for the same thing it's always stood for, tractor family.
Gotcha. Okay.
So 5,000 series tractor before, 5 series tractor now.
Gotcha. All right.
So that is easy to understand. The next 3 are actually the engine horsepower. So the first question that a farmer or cattleman always asks is, what's the horsepower of this tractor? He sees one at a farm show or whatever. Now he doesn't have to ask; it's right on the hood.
Gotcha.
So that's good. And then also you have the letter at the end. Very important.
Okay.
The letter at the 5th. We call it the 5th position of the number. Very important because it stands for the specification level of the tractor. So the 5 Series, for instance, we have a D, an E limited, and an M.
Okay.
So the D would be 2-wheel drive, open station only. The M would essentially have all the features and benefits that you could hope for or want on a utility tractor, and the E is somewhere in between. And we can talk a little bit more about that as we move forward about what the specifics of each tractor are. But that hopefully will give people the idea that, okay, the lower the letter, the lower the specification. The higher the letter, the higher the specification. And I'll mention one other thing. If you see one out there and you listen to me talk and you see one with 6 numbers, you're like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, every now and then you'll find a tractor with a 6 position, and it'll be H or a L or something like that. It's for a specific configuration. H is high crop, L is low profile, stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So everything stands for something.
Gotcha.
So that's good.
That is helpful. That's a helpful nomenclature. And as we think about all the features that Rex was beginning to talk about, 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive and open station and cab and all the kinds of things that I can get in a John Deere tractor, Jim, what would you tell folks relative to those considerations when selecting some horsepower?
Sometimes there's a specific need of the implement. It takes X amount of horsepower to pull it.
Sure.
But not just horsepower to pull it, but you need that mass or that weight to keep it under control. If your ground is rolly and hilly, you have to maintain both the control of the tractor and the implement. And then like a round baler, you're adding weight as you're making the bale. Or if you're pulling a wagon behind a small square baler, it starts out very light, but as the day goes on, you keep putting more and more hay on there, all of a sudden you could exceed that weight. So you have to look at the total job it needs to do in that environment. Then you also need to look at some other things, like when we're selling disc mowers or mower conditioners with a disc cutting system, we recommend a closed cab because we don't want any kind of object thrown as you're cutting through the field. And it's all about operator safety. And then there's other things that you can apply. What else are you using it for besides that and the mating equipment?
Gotcha.
So as you make a round bale, do I need to move it with that same tractor, or do I have another tractor assigned to that responsibility?
Yeah, so it really is this whole systems thinking and diagnosing needs. What else would you add from your perspective, Rex?
Well, just going back and kind of elaborating a little bit on what I was talking about in name and numbering really provides a good answer to that question as well, because we have a lot of tractors that are at 1 horsepower. So that may be something new for a lot of cattlemen and farmers or other customers for tractors. Used to, if you need a 50 horsepower tractor, then you go to the John Deere dealership and they show you the 50 horsepower tractor.
Right.
Now they show you 4.
Yeah.
So what are you supposed to do? And the good thing is that actually provides you with some choice about what you're willing to pay for, how quickly you want to get the job done, how many implements you want to put on the tractor, what the capabilities of the tractor are, how comfortable, how convenient you want to be. And it goes back to what I was saying before. The higher the letter, the higher specification, the higher the price. The lower the letter, the lower specification, the lower the price. And one other thing I'll mention about the horsepower overlaps, not only would it be that you have a few tractors or 2 or 3 tractors of one family there. You may have some overlapping family, like around 80 to 90 horsepower.
Okay.
You have some 5 family and some 6 family tractors.
Gotcha.
That goes back to what Jim was saying before. You have to understand the weight of the implements that you're pulling,
Gotcha.
and the tractor needs to be fitted to pull the weight of the implements.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can't hook up a heavy 568 baler that's going to be going in wet hay to a 5000 series tractor, and expect it to perform up and down hills and stuff like that, even though it may be 90 PTO horsepower.
Right.
You probably need a 6 in that case. So that's another consideration to keep in mind.
Now, Ron, I'll be honest with you. John Deere has always been known for having pretty expensive equipment, and maintaining and managing production costs pretty important right now in the beef cattle industry. What are you all doing to help cattle producers manage their production costs and improve their profitability?
Well, one of the things that production cost is related to is the production of the feed that the producer is feeding his cattle. Well, that's where John Deere comes into play, because we produce the machinery that helps produce the feed that you're going to feed the cattle. If you take the fuel expense, just for example, on running the tractor through all the various operations that the producer is going to do, I think we could help your producers save up to 10% of their fuel that they consume annually. One way is our engines today are much more fuel efficient than engines of yesterday.
Okay.
As we move forward, we learn more and more about the internal combustion engine and how to make it more efficient to get the most amount of energy out of every gallon of fuel. But beyond that, there's some really simple tips that your producers could pick up tomorrow, even with their existing products, to help them save fuel. We've done some research recently where we went out and actually pulled down some data off tractors to see how are these engines being loaded.
Okay.
Well, surprisingly, a lot of the engines are not being loaded very much. In fact, we're finding that it doesn't matter if it's a 5,000 series tractor or an 8,000 series tractor. A lot of these tractors are spending a significant amount of time doing non-productive work, in the neighborhood of 30% of the time sitting there idling, non-productive. Well, one of the simplest ways you can save fuel would be to turn the tractor off when you're not doing productive work.
Sure.
Today's engines start easy. We have good starters. We have good batteries. They start right up. You know, in the old days, it was common knowledge that we'll just let the diesel engine run because diesel's cheap.
Yeah.
Today, every penny is important. So when you're not using the engine, when you're not doing productive work, turn it off.
Okay.
You're going to save fuel.
Yeah.
Not to mention depreciation, wear and tear on the engine, and all the other things that come with it.
Yeah.
Some other things that we might talk about is, you know, match the tractor horsepower to the job that it's doing.
Okay.
Jim mentioned earlier, you know, let's figure out what size baler we want to do, and then let's match the tractor to it.
Right.
Well, you can't always do that. Sometimes you have more tractor than you have implement. So in those cases, one thing you can do is shift up and throttle back.
Okay.
You've got extra horsepower, so go ahead and take an extra gear, but then control your ground speed by pulling your throttle back.
Grab a gear and throttle back.
You got it. We've talked about that a long time. Another way to save fuel is, you know, use the right amount of ballast. If you're doing tillage work, you need ballast to get the power to the ground to pull your chisel plow, your field cultivator, your disc through the field. When you're doing mowing or baling, you don't need that ballast. So take the time, put the ballast on when you're doing the tillage work, take the ballast off when you're not needing it.
Gotcha.
Every pound of ballast that you run through the field when you don't need it, it just takes energy to push it through the field.
Sure.
And some other things you can talk about is, you know, make sure your tires have the proper inflation pressure. A properly inflated tire will roll across the ground much easier than a poorly inflated tire.
Gotcha.
So keep your tire pressure up. Some of the simple things, I mean, they're common sense, but we never think about it usually, and these are some things that really add up.
And as they've always said, sometimes common sense isn't all that common. Jim, forage is a huge issue for us cattle people. What can we do from a forage and hay standpoint to reduce some of our costs maybe?
Well, a lot of things have happened on the forage side. We used to do it with very simple tools, but today, you know, we're applying a lot of technology. Also, like engines, we've learned a lot of ways to save time, fuel, and effort. We used to cut our hay mostly with sickle machines.
Sure.
And sickles had limits, you know, the thickness of the crop and matted crop, wet crop. Sometimes we could only creep through the field. But that high horsepower tractor or that horsepower was not being utilized efficiently. Today we're cutting most of our hay and forages with a rotary disc type system, a disc mower, a disc mower conditioner. That allows us to cut 2-3 times faster than what we used to. And not only being able to cut faster, if we aren't plugging, we aren't stopping, we aren't hesitating, we're always getting something done. And by doing a continuous job, we're also creating a uniform product. So that allows the whole operation to stay timely. We don't have that wet spot in the field that needs to be dry before we can go bale. It's all uniform. That's one way to save. Another way is we talked about technology, net wrap systems on round balers.
Okay.
Putting net wrap on a bale, sometimes people think that's a cost. Well, we learned a couple years ago when fuel got up $3 and plus, it was costing the operator of that baler about $1 per bale just to put twine on versus net.
Wow.
$1 per bale for fuel, just for the fuel. If we can put net on a bale in 6 seconds, and it takes 45 to 50 seconds for twine, not only are we going to get more bales made per hour, but we're going to save fuel for that non-productive time that Ryan was talking. We're just sitting there waiting for the next part of the
In my experience, get better hay because of it.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll probably touch on that a little more.
Excellent. This is a great discussion. I do have some more questions for you.